Death Note has seen its fair share of popularity when it comes to the manga and the anime adaptation. We got to see the whole story unfold on both versions, with some minor differences of course. To be honest, in any adaptation of anime from manga, there always will be minor differences, but not all of them are worth mentioning always. But sometimes these differences plays an important role to wrap up the overall story much better. No matter how you look at it, Death Note manages to grab the attention of fans everywhere, whether you have read the manga or watched the anime series. However, as the series is so much famous, it's really important to put these differences out there so people will understand what original source material was like and what they have watched in the anime adaptation. So for that reason, today we are going over some of the most notable differences from Death Note anime and manga. So without any further ado, let's start with our video. On the 10th number, the difference is the story's ending was different. No, don't worry, in both anime and manga, Light Yagami dies, but the way he dies is shown differently in manga. After getting exposed as the real identity of Kira by Nier, in the anime, Light tries to use the piece of Death Note to write Nier's name but ends up getting shot by Masuda. After getting shot multiple times, Light runs away from the police after getting exposed. But Ryuk sees that his life is basically almost over, so he writes Light's name in his Death Note and finally kills him. But in manga, Light begs Ryuk to kill Nier and Masuda instead. But as a god of death, he cannot and will not do things according to a merry human will tell him to do. So the Shinigami writes the Light's name instead. In the end, Light asks Ryuk, "Why did you do this to me?" And Ryuk tells him that he couldn't wait forever if he is in prison for him to die. So he puts him out of misery at that point in time. On the 9th number, the difference is some of the rules of Death Note weren't explained in the anime. There were rules on how one could use the Death Note, but not all of them were present when it comes to the anime series. These rules plays an important role by showing in which way you cannot use Death Note. In the manga, some of the rules had a lot more emphasis than what was shown in the manga. One of the rules stated that you couldn't manipulate a person into killing another person or a whole group of people, just like a bomb or mass killing. That wasn't clearly explained in the anime, but it was implied that it was a rule for using the powerful notebook. In this anime, just like each rule was shown after half an episode, manga provided a rule from the book after the end of every chapter. And I'm sure that Kira thought of every way possible of killing people and not raising the suspicion on him. But because of this rule, he couldn't manipulate anyone and ended his life in a misery. On the 8th number, the difference is Light's personality was somewhat different in the manga than anime. Light came off as a typical school student who scored top in every exam, but deep inside he wanted to change the world and he tried to do that after finding the Death Note. His personality before obtaining this powerful book was very different as it was portrayed in both the anime and manga. Light became more of a vindictive person in the anime series, where he was full of hatred for his classmates every time he eavesdropped on their conversations. He already had hate for the people around him even before getting the Death Note. But in the manga, he wasn't as malicious as he was in the anime. Instead, he kept more to himself as a loner. However, he didn't hate what life has brought him. He was just bored and wanted some thrill in his life. And gaining a Death Note for sure provided him with lot of that. On the 7th number, the difference is L's reaction to Light's true identity wasn't the same in both mediums. Once L was on the verge of death, he figures out that Light is actually Kira, even though it was too late for him to expose the truth. When L falls off his chair in the manga, we see him saying to himself that he was right all along about Light being the killer. However, the anime doesn't show his final thoughts, and instead, we see L looking blankly at Light, which could imply that he figured it out that Light is the real killer. But with the manga, we figured out what L was thinking when he was about to meet his end. But we never got that reaction when the scene was shown in the anime. On the 6th number, the difference is the manga revealed how L learned to fight. We saw a fight brew between Light and L in the Death Note series during their first encounter. Light was really punching randomly, and we also got to see L fighting, which is very rare. We found out how skilled L is as a fighter when he showcased his mastery in the art of capoeira. Fans got to see firsthand that L knew how to effectively use the Afro-Brazilian martial arts style. However, we never figured out how he learned this fighting style in the anime. But in the manga, there does reveal this important piece of information in 13th volume, where it is said that L learned fighting when he was working on a case with the FBI agent Naomi Misora before the case of Kira. And he taught him all of these martial arts. On the 5th number, the difference is Light laughed at the Death Note in the manga. When Light first encountered Ryuk, he is initially frightened by the sight of him. However, it was the reaction to the Death Note at first glance that caught him off guard. His response was he thought it was as a simple joke in the manga and laughed at the notion of its rules. When he picked it up, he thought it was just a merely prank, and once he read the rules, he tried it out of curiosity. In the anime, he scoffs it off as nothing when he picks it up for the first time in the first episode. We don't see him laughing at the merry sight of Death Note, and even though he also thought this as a prank, he just picks it up quietly and starts walking towards his home. On the 4th number, the difference is the manga explores Light's mentality more than the anime. When Light starts using the Death Note, we see how much of his mental state has changed. In the manga, he suffers some physical harm to his body as he develops trouble sleeping and eating. We see him losing some weight since he doesn't have much of an appetite, as he is always in the cat and mouse game with L. We see that the killing of people does mess with his mind in the manga. But meanwhile in the anime, we don't see much of a difference in his physical body or even in his eating or sleeping cycles. These small details really helps the manga readers to understand and relate with the Kira more than the anime for sure. In the anime, it appears that Light still eats when he can, but his mentality seems to be still intact for a man trying to cleanse the world of criminals, which is not totally possible. On the 3rd number, the difference is the origin of L's name was deeply explored in the manga. L's background has been much of a mystery throughout the first half of the series. We only knew him to be one of the most renowned detectives in the world. L used different aliases like Heraldo Coil and Denway to conceal his identity, which proved to be useful against Light. Both of these names aren't actually random though, as it turns out that all of these were the names of other detectives that he has known in the field. In the manga, we learn that L had a war against these two men to determine who was the greatest detective. Once the Yotsuba Corporation got the hold of Death Note, they contacted Heraldo for his expertise. But in reality, it was L who picked up the case as he used this name to hide his identity. We never got to see this thing in the anime, but this added more complexity to L's character for sure. On the 2nd number, the difference is Misa's death wasn't shown in the anime but ended up in the manga. After the death of Light, we got to see how it affected some of the characters, especially with his partner in crime Misa Amane. In the anime series, we see Misa standing on the top of a building. It was implied that she committed suicide after Light died. But in the manga, we do witness Misa actually falling to death in the epilogue of the series. So this theory is still revolving around now, saying that Misa might be alive are not true at all. She dies in the manga. We saw a definite end to the anime series, but we never experienced how the ending of his life would affect others around him. But Misa seems to be only one who was deeply affected by his death. On the 1st number, the difference is an epilogue was added after the manga ended. That means there's some part in the manga that you haven't watched in the anime. After the manga came to a close, Death Note was given a one-shot special that acted as an epilogue to the series. Taking place 3 years after the end of the series, it follows Nier as he assumes the position of new L, and a new Kira emerges when another Death Note is found, using it to kill the elderlies to relieve their pain. It seems like another chase would begin, but Nier brushes this off by saying that it is a cheap imitation of new Kira. It wasn't what we got in the anime series, as ending clearly showed that the people are still worshipping Kira after Light's death, and some people still consider him as a god of the new world. And I think that was for today's video, guys. That wraps up about the video of top 10 differences between the manga and the anime series of Death Note. What are your thoughts about this video? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I post daily anime content about top 10 top 5 listings, anime reviews, recommendations, news, theories and all sorts of anime content on daily basis. So if you enjoyed, please subscribe, and that was it, and I will see you in the next one. Sayonara.